The Galactic Dominion had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. In all that time, no one had ever beaten them. They controlled 1,000 worlds. They commanded fleets that could burn planets to ash. They were the masters of everything, and they wanted everyone to remember it. That was why they had the arena. Every species that joined the Dominion, by choice or by force, had to send a fighter. One person from each world. One chance to prove their worth. The arena was not about fairness. It was about power. It was about showing every conquered people that they were small and weak, and lucky to be alive. The humans had been conquered 3 years ago. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were old. Their planet had fallen in 6 days. Now they lived under Dominion rule, like everyone else. They paid their taxes. They followed the laws. And every year, they sent a fighter to die. The first human fighter had been a soldier named Kevin Brooks. He was strong and fast and brave. He lasted 8 seconds before a creature with 6 arms tore him apart. The second was a boxer named Raymond Hill. He had won championships on Earth. He knew how to fight. He lasted 6 seconds. The third was a woman named Stephanie Grant. She had trained in martial arts her whole life. She lasted 4 seconds. The fourth was a Special Forces soldier named Derek Palmer. He had killed men with his bare hands. He had survived wars. He volunteered for the arena because he believed he could win. He lasted 11 seconds. It was the human record. Now, it was time for the 5th fighter. The selection committee had waited for volunteers. They'd put out calls across the planet. They offered money, fame, anything they could think of. No one came forward. After watching 4 people die in less than a minute combined, no one wanted to be next. So they used the lottery. Every human between the ages of 18 and 40 was entered. 3 billion names went into the system. The computer would pick one, and that person would go to die in the arena. Megan Holloway was eating breakfast when they announced the name. She was sitting in her small apartment in Montana, drinking coffee and watching the news. She worked as a veterinary technician at a clinic in town. She helped sick animals get better. She had a cat named Biscuit and a small garden on her balcony. She had never been in a fight in her life. When she heard her name on the television, she did not understand at first. She thought it was a mistake. There were other Megan Holloways in the world. Surely they meant someone else. But then her phone rang and kept ringing. And then someone knocked on her door. The officials were polite. They explained that she had been selected. They told her what would happen next. They gave her papers to sign. They said she would leave in 2 weeks. Megan signed the papers. She did not cry. She did not scream. She simply nodded and signed her name and watched them leave. Then she sat on her couch for 3 hours without moving. Her father came that evening. Carl Holloway was 62 years old. He had served in the Marines for 20 years. He had fought in 2 wars. He had seen men die. But when he walked into his daughter's apartment and saw her sitting there, he broke down and wept like a child. "There has to be something we can do," he said through his tears. "Someone we can talk to? Money we can pay." "There's nothing, Dad," Megan said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. "I read the rules. Once the lottery picks you, that is it. No exceptions. This is wrong. You are not a fighter. You are not a soldier. You help animals. I know." Her mother arrived the next day. Linda Holloway had not spoken to her ex-husband in 8 years, but she came anyway. She had a plan. She always had plans. "I know a senator," Linda said. "Patricia Cole. She works with the Dominion Liaison Office. She can get you out of this." "No one can get me out of this, Mom. You do not know that." "I do know that. I looked it up. The rules are absolute. If Earth does not send a fighter, they destroy a city. Any city they choose. Millions of people. Linda went pale. They would not really do that. They burned half of South America when we tried to resist the invasion. Yes, they would really do that. The 2 weeks passed quickly and slowly at the same time. Megan put her affairs in order. She found a home for Biscuit with her neighbor, an old woman named Dorothy who had always loved the cat. She gave away her things. She called old friends and family members and said goodbye. Without saying goodbye, she also started reading. The Dominion had public records of every arena fight in history. Thousands of years of combat, all available on the network. Megan downloaded everything about the past 100 years. She watched videos. She read analysis. She studied the different species and their fighting styles. She was not looking for hope. She knew she was going to die, but something in her refused to go into that arena blind. If she was going to die, she would at least understand how the transport ship arrived on a Tuesday morning. It was huge and silver and beautiful in a cold way. The Dominion representative who came to collect her was a tall insect creature named Vizix. He had 4 arms, compound eyes, and a voice that sounded like metal scraping against metal. "You are Megan Holloway?" he asked. "Yes. You are smaller than I expected." "I get that a lot." Vizix made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You have spirit. That is good. It will make your death more entertaining." Megan did not respond. She simply picked up her small bag and followed him onto the ship. The journey to Velith Prime took 3 weeks. The ship traveled through something called fold space, which let it cross vast distances almost instantly. But even with that technology, the Dominion homeworld was far away. Megan spent the time reading. The ship had a library with more information than she could ever process. She focused on the arena, the rules, the fighters, the strategies that had worked and the ones that had failed. One file caught her attention. It was about human physiology compared to other species in the Dominion. The comparison was not kind. Humans were weaker than almost every other intelligent species. They were slower than most. They had no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities. But there were a few things where humans ranked higher. Endurance was one. Humans could keep moving longer than almost any other species. Where others would sprint and collapse, humans could maintain a steady pace for hours. Days, even. Recovery was another. Humans healed from injuries that would kill most other creatures. Broken bones, deep cuts, infections. Given time, the human body could repair almost anything. And then there was fear. Every species felt fear. It was a survival instinct. But the file noted something strange about humans. They could function while afraid. They could think and plan and act even when their bodies were screaming at them to run. Other species froze or panicked or fled. Humans pushed through. Megan read that section 3 times. She was not sure what to do with the information, but she stored it away in her mind. On the last day of the journey, Vizix came to see her. "We arrive tomorrow," he said. "You will be taken to the fighter quarters. You will be assigned a trainer. The games begin in 1 month. Thank you for telling me." Vizix studied her with his compound eyes. "You are different from the other humans we have collected." They cried. They begged. They made demands. "You have done none of those things. Would any of that help?" "No. Then why would I do it?" The insect creature was quiet for a moment. "You will still die, Megan Holloway. Nothing you have read will change that." "Probably," she agreed. "But I would rather die knowing than die ignorant." Vizix nodded slowly. "I will tell the trainers you are unusual. Perhaps they will find you interesting." He left without another word. Megan turned back to her reading. She had 1 more night to prepare. She intended to use every minute of it. Velith Prime was nothing like Earth. The sky was orange instead of blue. The sun was larger and redder, The air tasted different, filtered through machines that made it safe for humans to breathe. Everything felt wrong in ways that Megan could not quite explain. The arena complex was a city by itself. Towers reached toward the sky in shapes that seemed impossible. Streets were filled with creatures from 100 different worlds. Some walked on 2 legs. Some had 4 or 6 or 8. Some floated. Some crawled. Megan had never seen anything like it. She was taken to the fighter quarters, a massive building on the edge of the complex. Her room was small but clean. A bed, a table, a screen on the wall. No windows. The door locked from the outside. Her trainer arrived the next morning. His name was Korvax. He was a reptile creature, 7 feet tall with green scales and yellow eyes. Scars covered his body from head to tail. One of his eyes was cloudy and blind. He walked with a limp. "I have trained 73 tribute fighters," he said. His voice was deep and rough. 69 died in their first match. 4 survived long enough to die in their second. Megan nodded. "What happened to you?" Korvax touched one of his scars. "I was a fighter once. Long ago. Before they changed the rules and let trainers retire." "You survived?" "I survived 12 matches. Then I was too broken to continue. They let me train others instead. 12 matches. That is impressive." Korvax made a sound like a growl. It was not impressive. It was luck. And stubbornness. And a little bit of skill. He walked around her slowly, examining her from every angle. "You are small. Yes, you are weak. Yes, you have no natural weapons. No armor, no venom, no claws. Yes, you cannot read minds or control fire or change your shape. No. What can you do, Megan Holloway?" She had thought about this question during the journey. She had an answer ready. "I can keep going when others stop." Korvax tilted his head. "Explain. Humans are not fast. We are not strong. But we can run for hours without rest. Our ancestors used to hunt by chasing animals until they collapsed from exhaustion. We would just keep following, keep walking, keep going. Eventually, the prey could not run anymore. This is true? It is true. We call it persistence hunting. It is how we survived before we had weapons." Korvax considered this. "The arena is enclosed. You cannot run forever." "No, but I can outlast. I can wait. I can let others tire themselves while I stay steady. That is not a strategy. That is a hope. It is all I have." The reptile trainer was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat down on the floor, crossing his legs beneath him. "Tell me more," he said. Megan sat across from him. She told him about human history, about how they had survived ice ages and plagues and wars, about how they had climbed from caves to starships in just a few thousand years, about how they kept going even when everything said they should stop. She told him about fear. "Every creature fears," Korvax said. "This is not special. No, but humans can work through fear. We can be terrified and still think, still plan, still act. Our bodies tell us to run, and we ignore them. We learned how to use fear instead of being controlled by it. How? I do not know exactly. It is something in our minds. We can separate the feeling from the action. We can be scared and still move forward." Korvax leaned back. His yellow eyes were thoughtful. "I have seen many species in this arena. I have seen warriors who felt no fear at all. They died quickly because they did not respect the danger. I have seen creatures so afraid they could not move. They died even faster. And the ones who survived? They were afraid, but they controlled it. They used it." He paused. "Perhaps you are not as helpless as you appear." "I am still going to die," Megan said. "The odds are clear." "Yes, probably, But I have learned something in my years here. The arena does not always follow the odds. Sometimes the small and weak survive while the large and strong fall. Sometimes the unexpected happens. Do you think I can win? Korvax was honest. No, I do not think you can win. But I think you might last longer than the others. And in this place, lasting longer is its own kind of victory. The training began the next day. Korvax did not try to make her strong. He knew that was impossible. Instead, he taught her to be aware, to watch, to notice things others missed. The arena has patterns, he explained. The environment changes, but it follows rules. Learn the rules, and you can predict what comes next. He showed her recordings of past games. The terrain shifted based on time. Temperature changed in cycles. Hazards appeared in certain areas at certain moments. Nothing was random. Everything had a reason. The organizers want entertainment, Korvax said. They do not want fighters to die too quickly. So they build in patterns that smart fighters can use. But no one has figured this out before. Some have. The ones who lasted longest. But most fighters rely on strength. They do not look for patterns. They do not think, because thinking is not their advantage. Exactly. But it might be yours. Megan studied the recordings for hours every day. She looked for the patterns Korvax described. At first, she saw nothing. The game seemed chaotic and random. But slowly, she began to notice things. Water always appeared in the same places. Dangerous areas were marked by subtle signs in the terrain. Temperature drops were preceded by changes in the artificial light. Everything connected to everything else. You are learning, Korvax said one day, watching her analyze a fight from 50 years ago. It is like tracking animals, Megan replied. Back home, I used to hike in the mountains. You learn to read the land, to see where water flows, where animals walk, where the ground is stable. This is useful knowledge. I never thought it would matter. I just like being outside. Korvax made a sound that might have been a laugh. The arena does not care what you thought. It only cares what you know. The other fighters began arriving as the days passed. Megan watched them from a distance. Some were massive, towering creatures with muscles like steel cables. Others were sleek and fast, built for speed and precision. A few glowed with inner light, their bodies containing energies she could not understand. They all looked at her with pity, or amusement, or nothing at all. One day, a Kovasi fighter approached her in the common area. His skin was made of crystal, beautiful and hard. His name was Vrex. You are the human, he said. It was not a question. Yes, I watched your people die in previous games. They were brave but foolish. They fought like they had something to prove. What should they have done instead? Vrex tilted his crystalline head. Survived. That is the only thing that matters here. Not honor, not glory, survival. Is that why you are still alive? I have fought in 3 games. I won each time, but I did not win by being the strongest or the fastest. I won by being the last one standing. Megan nodded slowly. That is what my trainer says too. Korvax is wise. He understands what most do not. The arena rewards patience more than power. Why are you telling me this? Vrex was quiet for a moment. I do not know. Perhaps because you are different from the other humans. They came here already defeated. You come here still thinking, I am still going to die. Probably. But you will die with your eyes open. That is more than most can say. He walked away without another word. That night, Megan lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling. She thought about her father, crying in her apartment. Her mother, trying to find a way out. Her cat, now living with Dorothy. Her clinic, where sick animals waited for help that she would never give. She was afraid. The fear was always there, a cold weight in her stomach. But she could still think. She could still plan. She could still move forward. Maybe that was enough. Maybe it was not. Either way, she would find out soon. The games were only 2 weeks away. The Grand Arena of BellHFY Prime was the largest structure Megan had ever seen. It rose from the ground like a mountain made of metal and light. 3 million seats surrounded a combat floor that stretched for miles. Screens floated in the air, ready to show every moment of blood and death to the crowd. The opening ceremony was held on a bright morning. All 100 tribute fighters were brought to the center of the arena and arranged in a long line. They stood there while the crowd filled the seats around them. The noise was overwhelming. Millions of voices, screaming and cheering and laughing. Megan stood near the end of the line. She wore the standard human combat suit, a gray uniform made of thin material. It would not stop a blade or a claw. It would not protect her from fire or acid or cold. It was basically nothing. She had been given one weapon, a knife. It was sharp and well made, but it was still just a knife. The Valkyrie next to her had 4 arms with claws that could cut through metal. The Kovaci on her other side had crystal armor that could deflect plasma fire. The Mindori across the way could kill with a thought. Megan had a knife. The announcer appeared above them, a being made entirely of swirling energy. Its voice filled the arena, reaching every corner with perfect clarity. "Welcome to the Grand Arena of BellHFY Prime," it said. "Welcome to the greatest spectacle in the galaxy. Welcome to the tribute games." The crowd roared. "Today we gather to witness the finest warriors from across the Dominion. Champions of their species. Fighters who will prove their worth in blood and combat. Only the strong survive here. Only the worthy advance." The announcer began introducing the fighters one by one. Each name brought cheers from the crowd. Each fighter stepped forward to show themselves. The Valkyrie raised his 4 arms. The Kovaci let his crystal skin catch the light. The Mindori made the air around her shimmer with psychic energy. Then it was Megan's turn. And now, from the newly conquered world of Sector 779, we have their champion. The announcer made a sound like confusion. "Her name is Megan? Megan?" What a strange collection of sounds. How amusing. The crowd laughed. 3 million voices, unified in mockery. She comes from a species called humans. They are small and soft and weak. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities. They cannot even pronounce their own names properly. More laughter. Louder now. The announcer was enjoying itself. Their previous fighters lasted an average of 7 seconds. 7 seconds. I have seen sneezes that lasted longer. The laughter continued. It echoed off the walls of the arena. It pressed down on Megan from every direction. She could feel it like a physical weight. Perhaps this one will set a new record. Perhaps she will last 8 seconds. Or even 9. We should all be so lucky to witness such an achievement. The crowd was in tears now. Some of them were holding their sides. Some were pointing at her and making gestures she did not understand. The joke went on and on, each line bringing new waves of amusement. Megan stood perfectly still. She did not look down. She did not try to hide. She just waited. And then, when the laughter finally began to fade, she did something no tribute fighter had ever done before. She walked toward the announcer. The arena fell silent. Complete, absolute silence. One moment there was laughter, and the next, there was nothing at all. 3 million beings held their breath. Tribute fighters did not move without permission. They stood where they were placed until the games began. This was tradition. This was law. This had been true for 12,000 years. Megan walked anyway. She stopped about 30 feet from the announcer's platform and looked up at the swirling energy being Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her teeth. Her hands were shaking. Every part of her body was screaming at her to run, to hide, to make herself small. She ignored all of it. "My name is Megan Holloway," she said. The arena systems carried her voice to every seat, just as they had carried the announcer's mockery. "I am a veterinary technician from Montana. I help animals when they are sick or hurt. I have never killed anything larger than a spider." The crowd remained silent. No one moved. No one spoke. "You think my name is funny? You think my species is weak? You think I will die quickly, and maybe you are right." She turned slowly, looking at the millions of faces staring down at her. "But I want you to remember something. When my ancestors lived in caves, they had no claws, no armor, no psychic powers. They had nothing except their minds and their hands and each other." Her voice was steady now. The shaking in her hands had stopped. They survived ice ages that killed everything else. They survived predators that should have eaten them. They survived diseases and disasters and wars. They survived themselves, which was often the hardest thing of all. She paused, letting the words settle. "We are here today because we refuse to give up." Generation after generation, we kept going. We fell down and got back up. We lost everything and started over. We faced impossible odds and found ways through. Megan turned back to face the announcer directly. "Whatever happens in these games, remember my name. Remember that I was afraid, and I stood here anyway. Remember that when you called my species weak, I did not look away." The silence lasted for 4 long seconds. Then something happened that no one expected. In the upper stands, a Valkyrie warrior brought his 4 hands together. It was a gesture of respect among his people, a recognition of courage. Another Valkyrie joined him. Then another. Then a Crevasse. Then a creature Megan did not recognize. The sound of hands meeting spread through the arena like ripples on water. It was not thunderous applause. It was not universal approval, but it existed. Scattered throughout the crowd, beings from dozens of different species were showing respect to a human who had dared to speak. The announcer said nothing. Megan walked back to her place in line. Her legs felt like they might collapse beneath her. Her heart was still pounding, but she kept her head high and her steps steady. The Crevasse fighter named Vrex leaned close to her. "You have made yourself a target," he whispered. "The organizers do not like surprises." "I was already a target," Megan replied. "Now I am a target they will remember." That is either very brave or very stupid, maybe both. The ceremonies continued. The announcer introduced the remaining fighters, but its voice had lost some of its enthusiasm. The jokes were shorter. The mockery was gone. When the introductions were finished, the fighters were led back to their quarters. Megan walked with the others, surrounded by creatures who could kill her without effort. But something had changed. They looked at her differently now. Not with pity, not with amusement, with curiosity. Korvax was waiting in her room. "I saw what you did," he said. "The whole galaxy saw what you did. Was it wrong? It was unexpected. In this place, unexpected things are dangerous. I could not stand there and let them laugh. I just could not." Korvax nodded slowly. "I understand. But now everyone will be watching you. The organizers, the other fighters, the crowd. You have made yourself interesting. Is that bad? It depends. Interesting can mean entertainment. Entertainment can mean they keep you alive longer for the show. But interesting can also mean threat. And threats are eliminated quickly." Megan sat down on her bed. The energy from her speech was fading. She felt tired and scared and very small. "What should I do?" "The same thing you were going to do before. Survive. Watch. Learn. Use what you know." He paused. "But now you have something else too. What?" You have the crowd's attention. Some of them. Not all, but some. They will be watching to see if you live up to your words. That pressure can break you. Or it can carry you. How do I know which one? Korvac stood and walked to the door. He stopped before leaving and looked back at her. You do not know. You just keep going and find out. He left her alone with her thoughts and her fear and the echo of her own words. The games would begin. Tomorrow. Megan lay down on her bed and stared at the ceiling. She thought about Montana, about her clinic, about Biscuit the cat and Dorothy the neighbor, about her parents and her friends and everyone she would probably never see again. She was still afraid. The fear never left, but beneath the fear, there was something else now. Something small and stubborn and fierce. She had spoken, and the galaxy had listened. Tomorrow, she would see if that mattered. The combat rounds were held over 3 days. 16 fighters became 8. 8 became 4. 4 became 2. Megan survived each round through the same methods that had kept her alive in the dome. She watched. She waited. She let her opponents exhaust themselves. She used the arena's terrain to her advantage. She did not try to overpower anyone. She simply outlasted them. The commentators called it persistence predation. They had found the term in human records. The idea that a creature could defeat prey not through speed or strength, but through sheer endurance. Through refusing to give up. Her opponents were faster and stronger. But they tired. They made mistakes. They underestimated the small human who would not stay down. In one match, a massive creature with tentacles chased her for 40 minutes. It was faster than her. It was stronger than her. But it could not sustain its pace. Eventually, it slowed. Eventually, it stopped. Eventually, it collapsed from exhaustion, and Megan stood over it with her knife. She did not kill it. She did not need to. The match was won when one fighter could no longer continue. The crowd began to cheer for her. Not all of them. Not even most of them. But enough. They had never seen anything like this. A fighter who won by refusing to lose. On the final day, only 2 fighters remained, Megan Holloway and Torix the Velthary. Torix was 8.5 feet tall. He had 4 arms, each one ending in claws that could tear through metal. He had fought in the arena for 6 years and never lost. He had killed over 200 opponents in various combat sports. He was the Dominion's most celebrated champion. The arena was at full capacity. 3 million seats, every one of them filled. The announcer did not mock Megan's name this time. In the final match of the tribute games, we have the Velthary champion Torix, who has dominated every opponent with overwhelming force. And facing him is the human Megan Holloway, who has advanced through methods that our experts still cannot fully explain. The crowd was divided. Some cheered for Torix. He was their hero, their champion, their proof of Velthary superiority. But others cheered for Megan. She had captured something in them, a hope they did not know they had. The idea that the small could stand against the large, that the weak could endure. Megan and Torix faced each other across the combat floor. The Velthary looked down at her, his forearms relaxed at his sides. "You have surprised everyone," he said. His voice was deep and resonant. "Including me. Thank you. I watched your fights. You do not give up. Even when you should. Even when anyone else would. It is all I know how to do." Torix nodded slowly. "I will make your death quick. You have earned that much. I appreciate the intention." They stood in silence, waiting for the bell to ring. The crowd held its breath. The announcer prepared the signal, but before the bell could sound, Torix did something no one expected. He lowered his 4 arms. He turned to face the Dominion viewing box, where the High Council watched the games. And he spoke. "I refuse to fight this opponent. The arena erupted in confusion. Voices everywhere, screaming questions. Guards began moving toward the combat floor. The High Council members leaned forward in their seats. "She has proven her worth," Torax continued, his voice cutting through the noise. "She survived what should have killed her. She led others to safety when she could have abandoned them. She stood before this arena and spoke truth when silence would have been easier." He turned to look at Megan. "She is a warrior. I will not be the instrument of her death for your entertainment." The crowd fell silent again. This had never happened. Not in 12,000 years. "I call upon the ancient right of recognition," Torax declared. "Let it be known throughout the Dominion that the human Megan Holloway has earned the respect of the Volturi people. Any who harm her will answer to us." Movement in the fighter area. Rex the Corvassi stepped forward. "The Corvassi stand with the Volturi. We grant recognition to Megan Holloway." Whisper the Mindori floated forward. The Mindori grant recognition. One by one, the surviving fighters who had followed Megan through the dome stepped forward. 6 different species. 6 different voices. All saying the same thing. Recognition. Respect. Protection. The guards stopped. They looked at each other, uncertain. This was beyond their training. Beyond their orders. The High Council consulted urgently. Their voices were not broadcast, but their faces showed their anger. This was supposed to be a simple spectacle. A reminder of Dominion power. Instead, it had become something else entirely. Finally, the senior council member stood. He was an ancient being, his species unknown, his body more machine than flesh. "The ancient right has not been invoked in 4,000 years, he said. His voice was cold and flat. "But it remains law. The human Megan Holloway is granted recognition by the peoples here assembled. The games are concluded. She may return to her world." The crowd exploded. Some cheered. Some screamed in protest. Some simply sat in stunned silence. Megan stood in the center of it all. She looked at Torax. "Why?" She asked. The Volturi champion considered the question. "I have killed many opponents. I have won many games. But I have never faced anyone like you. You showed courage when you had no reason to hope. You showed mercy when you could have killed. You showed something I had forgotten existed." "What?" "Dignity. In defeat and in victory, you maintained your dignity. That is rare. That is precious. That should be protected." Megan did not know what to say. She had come to this arena expecting to die. She had spoken her truth because she could not stay silent. She had fought to survive because it was all she knew how to do. And somehow, impossibly, she was going home. The announcer spoke one final time. "Ladies and gentlemen and beings of all forms, the tribute games have ended. The human champion stands undefeated." The crowd roared. Not all of them in approval, but enough. Megan Holloway, veterinary technician from Montana, did not raise her arms in triumph. She did not celebrate. She simply stood there, alive, having survived the unsurvivable through nothing more than endurance, observation, and the simple human refusal to give up. The journey home took 3 weeks. Megan spent most of it sleeping. Her body needed rest. Her mind needed silence. When she landed on Earth, her father was waiting. Carl Holloway did not speak. He simply wrapped his arms around his daughter and held her while they both cried. Her mother came the next day. Linda Holloway brought flowers and apologies and promises to be better. Megan accepted all of them. She went back to her clinic. She treated sick dogs and injured cats. She helped animals that could not help themselves. She never spoke publicly about the games, but the galaxy remembered. In the Dominion archives, a new entry was added to the file on humanity. It was written by a Volturi analyst who had studied Megan's performance in detail. The entry was short. It said, "Exercise caution when dealing with this species. They do not possess natural weapons or armor or special abilities. They are small and weak by galactic standards, but they have a quality that defies easy classification. They do not know when to quit. They do not accept defeat. They keep going long after any reasonable creature would stop. Recommend avoiding direct conflict. The cost of victory may exceed the value of conquest." It was perhaps the most accurate assessment of humanity ever recorded. Years later, when other species spoke of the tribute games, they did not remember the Velthary champion who refused to fight. They did not remember the council's anger or the crowd's confusion. They remembered a small human woman who stood in the center of the largest arena in the galaxy and said her name. They remembered that she was afraid, and she stood there anyway. They remembered that the announcer mocked her, and the stands fell silent before the first bell, not because she was strong, not because she was powerful, because she was human. And humans do not quit. The first day of the games was not combat. It was survival. 100 tribute fighters were taken to a massive dome on the edge of the arena complex. Inside was a simulated wilderness covering 20 square miles. There were forests and rivers and mountains. There were deserts and swamps and frozen tundras. The terrain shifted randomly. The climate changed without warning. The rules were simple. Stay alive for 24 hours. Anyone still breathing at the end would advance to the combat rounds. Fighters could kill each other if they wanted. Many would try. But the primary threat was the environment itself. Automated hunter drones patrolled the skies. The terrain was filled with traps and hazards. The temperature could swing from burning hot to freezing cold. In minutes, Megan stood at the entrance with the other fighters. They were spread out in a wide arc, each starting from a different point. When the signal came, they would enter the dome and fight to survive. The Dominion commentators were already talking. The human has drawn position 73, a difficult starting point near the swamp region. The terrain there is treacherous and visibility is poor. She will not last an hour. The Velthary champion Torix has position 72. He will find her quickly. Perhaps that is merciful. A quick death is better than a slow one. Megan ignored the voices. She had studied the dome's layout during her training. She knew the swamp region was dangerous. She also knew something the commentators did not. The swamp connected to underground tunnels. The tunnels led to safer terrain. If she could reach them before Torix found her, she had a chance. The signal sounded. A deep horn that echoed across the complex. The fighters surged forward into the dome. Megan did not run toward the swamp. She ran at an angle, cutting through a patch of dense forest first. It would cost her time, but it would break her trail. Torix would expect her to go straight. He would search the obvious paths. She would not be on the obvious paths. The forest was thick and dark. Strange plants grew everywhere, some of them moving on their own. Megan kept low and moved quickly. She had learned to navigate terrain like this in Montana, hiking through wilderness that tourists were afraid to enter. This was different, of course. The plants were alien. The sounds were wrong. The air smelled like metal and decay. But the principles were the same. Watch where you step. Listen for danger. Keep moving. She reached the edge of the swamp after 30 minutes. The ground turned soft beneath her feet. Water covered everything, dark and murky. She could see nothing below the surface. Most fighters would avoid this area. It was too risky, too easy to get stuck or lost or drown. Megan waded in. She moved slowly, testing each step before putting her weight down. She used a stick to probe the water ahead. She watched for ripples that might indicate movement. She listened for sounds that did not belong. The tunnel entrance was right where the map said it would be. A hole in the rock face, half hidden by hanging vines. Megan pushed through and found herself in darkness. She waited for her eyes to adjust. Slowly, shapes emerged. The tunnel stretched ahead, winding into the earth. It was narrow but passable. She started walking. Behind her, somewhere in the swamp, she heard screaming. A fighter had found something dangerous. Or something dangerous had found them. The screaming stopped after a few seconds. Megan kept walking. The tunnels connected to a network that ran beneath the entire dome. She had studied the pattern during her training. Most fighters did not know these paths existed. The information was available, but no one looked for it. They relied on strength. Not knowledge. Knowledge was all Megan had. She emerged from the tunnels 4 hours later on the far side of the dome. The terrain here was rocky and dry. Mountains rose in the distance. The temperature was warm, but not unbearable. The commentators had lost track of her. Where is the human? She entered the swamp region and never came out. Perhaps she drowned. Or was eaten. The swamp is full of predators. Mark her as presumed dead. We will confirm later. Megan found a sheltered spot between two large rocks and rested. She ate some of the emergency food she had been given. She drank water from a stream she identified as safe. She waited. Time passed slowly. She watched the sky, tracking the movement of the artificial sun. She listened to the sounds around her. Distant explosions, screaming, the hum of hunter drones on patrol. After 6 hours, she started moving again. She had learned something important during her training. The dome was designed to be entertaining. That meant the organizers wanted to keep fighters moving, wanted to create confrontations. If you stayed still too long, bad things happened. The environment would push you toward other fighters. But if you kept moving in the right patterns, you could avoid the worst of it. Megan followed a route she had memorized. Through the rocky terrain, around the mountain base, into a forest of crystal trees. She moved steadily, not fast but not slow. She watched for signs of other fighters and avoided them when she could. At the 12-hour mark, something unexpected happened. She noticed she was being followed. Not by a predator, not by a drone, by another fighter. It was a small creature, maybe 4 feet tall, with blue skin and large eyes. A Mindori. They were psychic hunters, able to sense thoughts and paralyze prey with mental attacks. Megan stopped and turned around. The Mindori stopped too. It watched her with those large eyes. "You are not attacking me," Megan said. "No," the Mindori replied. Its voice was soft and strange. "I have been watching you. You know things others do not. I studied. Yes, I can sense it in your thoughts. You have maps in your mind, patterns, routes." Megan tensed. If the Mindori could read her thoughts, it could take her knowledge and leave her with nothing. But the creature made no aggressive move. "I do not want to fight you," it said. "I want to follow you. Your routes have kept you safe. Mine have not been so successful. Why would I let you follow me? Because I can sense when others are near. I can warn you before they find us. We can help each other." Megan considered this. Alliances were allowed in the survival round. She had seen them in the recordings. Most ended in betrayal, but some lasted. "If you try to hurt me, I will not make it easy for you." The Mindori made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You have a knife. I can kill with a thought. But I do not want to kill you. I want to survive. Just like you. What is your name?" "My people do not have names in the way you understand. You may call me Whisper." "It is close enough." Megan nodded. "Stay behind me. Move when I move. Stop when I stop. Do not make sounds unless you sense danger." Whisper fell into step behind her. They moved through the dome together. Whisper warned her twice when other fighters were nearby. Both times, they changed course and avoided contact. The Mindori was true to its word. By hour 18, They had gathered 3 more followers. A Corvassi named Rex, the same one who had spoken to her before the games. A tall insectoid fighter called Chiton. A wounded humanoid from a species Megan did not recognize. Limping but determined. They had all noticed the same thing. Wherever the human went, she avoided the worst hazards. She found safe water. She found sheltered paths. She moved through terrain that should have killed her, and she came out the other side. They did not ask her to lead them. They simply followed. Megan did not object. More eyes meant more warning. More bodies meant more confusion for hunters. There was safety in numbers, as long as the numbers could be trusted. The final 6 hours were the hardest. The dome began to collapse inward, forcing fighters toward the center. The temperature swung wildly. The hunter drones increased their patrols. Megan led her group through it all. She made decisions quickly. She trusted her training. She kept moving when every part of her wanted to stop. When the horn sounded to end the survival round, Megan Holloway was still standing. So were the 12 fighters who had followed her. 43 tribute fighters had died in the dome. Of the 57 survivors, 12 owed their lives to a veterinary technician from Montana, who had simply refused to stop moving. The Dominion commentators were speechless. The human survived. Not only survived, but led a group of survivors through the most dangerous terrain in the dome. This is unprecedented. No tribute fighter from a conquered world has ever shown such competence. Perhaps we underestimated them. In the recovery area, Rex approached Megan. "How did you know which paths to take?" he asked. Megan shrugged. "I grew up in the mountains. You learn to read terrain, to watch for signs of water movement, unstable ground, animal activity. It is not magic. It is just paying attention. Our worlds have terrain. We do not learn these things. Your worlds have technology. You do not need to learn. My world was different for a long time. We had to learn or we died." Rex considered this. "You are more dangerous than you appear." Megan Holloway. Megan looked at the dome behind them, at the bodies being carried out, at the fighters who had not been smart enough or lucky enough to survive. "I am exactly as dangerous as I need to be," she said. The combat rounds would begin in 3 days. 16 fighters remained. Megan intended to be ready.